Hi guys, Olive here, coming to you today from an actual remote cabin in the woods that my husband and I rented for the long weekend. We had been cooped up in Pittsburgh for a very, very long time. My husband had actually not spent a single night outside of the house since last February of 2020. So we really felt that we needed to get out of the city, at least for a weekend, but we wanted to do it in a way that was safe for us and safe for other people. So we rented this place, which is far, far away from other people. It required making no contact with any other people. This cabin doesn't have any Wi-Fi. It doesn't have cable, so it was really a place where we could come and just unplug for a little bit. I knew that we weren't going to have cable or Wi-Fi when we rented this place, so of course I had to bring some books with me. I would bring some books with me even if we did have Wi-Fi and cable here. So I decided, because it's the end of the winter season and also because March Mystery Madness is going on right now, I decided to pluck 3 cozy mysteries off of my bookshelf and bring them along with me. I have already sped through all 3 of those books, so I thought I would sit down and talk to you about them. So these are the 3 cozy mysteries that I brought along to read during this trip. Ironically enough, they are all published by Minotaur Books, which I think does exclusively publish mysteries and thrillers. I know they also publish my all-time favorite cozy mystery series, the Amory Ames series, but these 2 I got at a library book sale. It was the same library book sale, although I don't think it was the exact same time. They hold it biannually, and before the pandemic, we would try to go to both the one in the fall and in the spring. I think I got these 2 at the same sale, but at different times of year. And then this last one, Steve Donahue sent to me. I'm pretty sure it's a joke, but I wanted to read it anyway. But I plan on talking about these 3 books in the order in which I read them. So let's start off with the first book I read. That was The Champagne Conspiracy by Ellen Crosby. This book was published in 2016 and it comes in at 362 pages. This is actually the 7th book in the Wine Country Mystery series, which I did not know when I first picked this book up. I was obviously just attracted to this cover. I mean, the Grim Reaper pouring a glass of champagne against a colorful backdrop. That is pretty much my aesthetic. This book, and I'm pretty sure this whole series, although I can't say for certain because I haven't read this whole series yet, this one takes place in Northern Virginia, in the Washington, D.C. area, and our main character is Lucy Montgomery. She owns and runs a vineyard in Northern Virginia, and in this book, she's investigating 2 different maybe related, maybe not mysteries. The first mystery that she's investigating involves her boyfriend / winemaker at this vineyard. An estranged member of her boyfriend's family shows up on their doorstep because he's being blackmailed, and he initially thinks that Lucy's boyfriend Quinn might be the one doing it. There is a family secret that he's being blackmailed about. There might just be a long-lost member of this family that's entitled to some of the family fortune, and that's not exactly information that they want to get out there. But then also, the second mystery is the fact that there was an elderly woman in this community who had just died toward the beginning of this book. And we find out that right before she passed, she had changed her will, and instead of leaving her substantial fortune to her favorite charities, as everyone expected her to do, she actually left all of her money to this long-lost granddaughter who lived in England that no one even knew she had. And right before she died, a friend of this elderly woman overheard her in an argument with a man. She couldn't identify who the man was just by his voice, but she heard her arguing with the voice of a man. So this person who overheard that argument, she asks Lucy to look into this elderly woman's death to make sure that she actually died of natural causes. When I was first starting this book, I thought it was going to be a 4-star read. I was really enjoying it. I didn't feel like starting on the 7th book was holding me back whatsoever. It's not like I felt like I was missing a whole bunch of things. These types of cozy mysteries that are in these long series do tend to be written in a way that can cater to people who are just starting with the series, but then people who have been with the series for a really long time. They try to make it so the book will appeal to either one of those types of readers. But then as the book goes on, there are just more and more characters in the mix, and I'm assuming assuming that these are people who, if you had been reading the previous books, you would already know who these people are. But for me, these were all new people who I was being introduced to, and it was a lot for me. And I don't think it would have been so difficult if I had read the previous books. So while it wasn't impossible for me to start this series on book 7, I don't know if I would recommend doing it. I did really like the writing at the beginning, but then I started to get irritated because there are all of these weird, unnecessary delays. Like the character is getting ready to do something that will be important to the plot, and she inexplicably has to shovel her driveway. There's actually time in this book given to her shoveling her driveway or entertaining her niece who walks in as she's trying to do something that will further the plot. I just didn't see why it was necessary because there are so many different things happening in this book. I feel like that time that she spends in this book showing us characters doing chores, that would have been much better spent furthering one of the plot lines. But when we weren't focusing on the main character's chores, this one definitely did have a very intriguing story. The history that the main character Lucy is looking into took place in the 1920s, so there's a lot of good roaring 20s energy to it. There are family secrets and political intrigue, since there's a former president behaving badly in here. It's good stuff. Overall, this was a pretty solid 3-star read for me. Enjoyable, I liked it, but it was nothing that knocked my socks off, just kind of your standard cozy mystery. But if you're interested in these books, the first one in the series is called The Merlot Murders, which I might have to go back and read because I feel like I need to get to know some of these characters now. And then the next cozy mystery that I sped through is called Come Hell or Highball by Maya Chance. This one was published in 2015 and comes in at 307 pages. And unlike the previous book, The Champagne Conspiracy, this is actually the first book in a series, the Discreet Retrieval Agency series. The main character of these books is one Lola Woodby, a socialite who is newly widowed at the beginning of this first book. But that doesn't mean that she's in mourning because her husband was a philandering, good-for-nothing so-and-so, and frankly, she's pretty glad to be rid of him. Except for the fact that he blew through all of their money before he died, and she's been left with nothing. She lost everything, including her home. She has to make money somehow, so she and her Swedish cook decide that they're going to team up and go into business together, and in their business, they are going to discreetly retrieve things for people. Hence the title of this book series. They get the idea to do that because at the beginning of this first book, they are approached by a young showgirl who wants them to go and get back this embarrassing film reel that she'd prefer no one see. And then, of course, along the way, there are a series of murders that the main character and her cook feel compelled to solve. And then the whole time, they're also being tailed by this handsome private detective for reasons unknown. I'll just come right out and say it. I really didn't care for this book. It's supposed to be the kind of book with a sassy and charming main character. She's super witty. You just can't help but fall in love with her. But I could help it in this book. I really didn't care for how hard the author was trying to make this funny and charming the entire way through. And this is supposed to take place in the Prohibition era. And nothing about it felt authentic. It really felt like this was our modern world. These were modern characters who just happened to time travel back to this era. And then there's the fact that this main character, Lola Woodby, is constantly, and I really mean that, she is constantly talking about her weight in a negative way. Now, I do feel that characters talking about how they feel about their bodies, I feel like insecurities are normal, and if they're not included when someone's talking about the way they look, that it's kind of inauthentic. We all have bad days and good days when it comes to our feelings about the way we look. But this character, every single time she talks about the way she looks, it is negative. She's talking about how she doesn't fit into anything. She's talking about wearing girdles. She's talking about her fat ankles. Other characters are commenting upon her weight, noticing her weight. It is at least once per chapter. I also didn't care for this story, and it dragged on for just far too long. I got to a point in the book where I was so ready for it to be over that I just started reading faster because I wanted to be done with it and then move on to the third book in the hopes that it would be better. But I guess that's a tip for reading faster. If you want to read faster, you want to read more books, read books that you can't wait to see the back of. I should note, though, that there was a character named Olive in here. I don't say that for purely narcissistic reasons. I say that because I don't see a whole lot of characters named Olive in books or movies or TV shows. I mean, the character named Olive in here was odious, but that's not the point. But anyway, this was a 2-star read for me. 2 stars because I finished it. And that's about it. I don't have any desire to continue with this series. This feels like a watered down, try-hard version of the Amory Ames series. And by the point in this book, when I was feeling like I couldn't wait for it to be over, I found myself wishing I had just brought one of the Amory Ames books to reread instead. And then the third and final cozy mystery that I read and that I will be talking about in this video is called Birdbath and Beyond by E.J. Copperman. This one was published in 2018 and comes in at 295 pages. The premise of this one is just as silly as it sounds, which I suppose is good advertising. The main character of this one is an agent to animal actors, so animals that appear in movies or TV shows. She represents them. And on the day that this book starts, she actually takes over as handler. She normally doesn't accompany her animal actors to the sets. That's the handler's job. But the handler was sick on the day that her talking parrot client needed to appear on set. So she takes over what she thinks is going to be just for that day. She takes over as handler. But that day ends up being the day that an actor is shot in his trailer on the set of a zombie medical drama. What gets our main character all tangled up in this mess is the fact that that talking parrot happened to be in the trailer at the time of the murder. So he's the only witness to the murder, and completely improbably he starts mimicking phrases that sound an awful lot like something the killer would have said to his victim right before he committed the crime. The plot doesn't get less far-fetched as we go along, but there are some more mundane things mixed in that kind of balance out that ridiculousness. Like, for example, the main character, Kay, her parents are in town for the duration of this situation, and they are performers on cruise ships. So there's this whole subplot that they're trying to figure out whether or not they're going to stay together as an act. And while that was nice to kind of have a distraction from the really ridiculous main plot, it was one of those things I really can't stand in fiction where something is presented like this might be a problem, and then by the end no wait, it's not actually a problem. But since her parents are in town during this whole ordeal, they attempt to help her out with the investigation, or should I say investigations. And I found it to be really believable because as they're trying to help her, they also completely unintentionally kind of hurt her. They say things that could work against her and they don't even realize it. The obliviousness was very realistic. I think my favorite thing about this book, though, was Kay, the main character's inner monologue. She's very witty and she thinks of a lot of puns. She normally doesn't say them aloud, but she's definitely thinking them. And that made me feel like this character and I would get along just fine. I don't always need to feel that I could be friends with a main character in order for me to like them. I'm not that kind of a reader, but every once in a while, it's nice to read about someone you could see yourself getting along with. This one was really fun to read, but the ending was confusing and not at all believable, which isn't entirely surprising given the premise of this book, but it was still disappointing. In general, I did enjoy my time reading this book. I thought the writing was pretty decent. I think this is another 3-star. This is actually the second book in the Agent to the Pause series. Like I said, this one came out in 2018, and I haven't seen anything to indicate that there have been any new books since this one, so I'm not sure if they're going to continue with the series. There were hints at the first book, Dog Dish of Doom. They hint at that case in this book, but they don't spoil it. And I also didn't feel like I was missing anything too big by starting with the second book. So if you are interested in this series, you can start with the first one or the second one. So there you have it, 3 cozy mysteries that I read in a remote cabin in the woods. That's why I chose cozy mysteries and not hard-boiled mysteries or even thrillers. I wasn't looking to be scared since I knew we were going to be really secluded. These weren't the greatest books I've ever read, but they were really enjoyable to just kind of get lost in this period of being unplugged. If you have any comments or questions about any of these 3 books, anything in this video, or about anything in general, you can feel free to put those in the comment section below. If you'd like to keep up with what I'm reading and writing about right now, you can find me on social media and a variety of other places online. The links to everywhere you can find me will be in the description box below, and also in that description box there will be a further reading section where I will list some titles of some cozy mysteries that you might enjoy if you liked any of these 3. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video when I'll be back in my reading room. Bye.